The minimum wage has been a topic of discussion during the presidential campaign. It's going to be an issue during the Trump administration. And today, for our classic interview, we're going to dig into a classic interview with Allyn Root. He calls himself a libertarian, but very often he just seems like an ideological conservative. I interviewed him in June of 2014. The topic was the minimum wage. And we seem to have a fundamental disconnect on even just the basic facts of how economies work. I'll leave it there, and we will get to my interview with Allyn Root from June of 2014. Prepare yourselves, because under Trump, there are going to be many discussions like what we're about to see here. Back on the program today is Allyn Root. He is the 2008 Libertarian Party vice presidential nominee, American politician, entrepreneur, political commentator, also author of the forthcoming book, The Murder of the Middle Class. And he's here today to talk about the minimum wage. Wayne, I don't want to summarize your position because you do it so well. You're not thrilled with the push to increase the minimum wage in the United States. Why is that?
Well, because I'm a small businessman. And first of all, only I know what I can afford to pay my employees. It's impossible. It's not unlikely. It's not bad. It's impossible. Literally, I can't say it any stronger, for a government a politician or a government bureaucrat to know what I should be paying my employees. And if you do think you know what I should pay my employees, my reaction will be I'll just fire half the employees. And that's what happens every single time that minimum wage is increased anywhere in the world. Look at Greece, look at Spain, look at Italy. You've got 60% youth unemployment. Minimum wage is basically not for poor people. For the most part, it's for young people with entry-level jobs. And if you're going to make me raise it, I just can't afford to have that many employees. So I'll just have to fire half of them. And really, government has no right to even tell me what I could pay people in my own private business.
All right, so let's put aside for a second the government having the right to or not, because that issue is less interesting since it's not one anybody's going to be able to change. There is a minimum wage. Let's talk about the facts on the ground of the effect of a minimum wage increase on unemployment. We don't have to look at Greece. We don't have to look at those countries. We can look at the United States, and we have plenty of information. And if you do an analysis, if you look at 2 decades worth of minimum wage increases, when you look at the minimum wage increases from 1987 to 2012, 52% of the time, and this is only looking when unemployment was already over 7%, okay, which is we would say we can't really tolerate too much more unemployment. 52% of the time, the unemployment rate went down in the year following the minimum wage increase. 4 times there was no change, and then the rest it went down. So at best, it's mere chance whether the minimum wage increase has an effect on employment.
Well, all I'm going to point out to you is that this morning, the opening statistics as I woke up were that we had one of the worst quarters in the history of America. Down negative 2.9% GDP growth. The country's coming apart at the seams. And to ask for a minimum wage increase now when businessmen across America like me are dying, starving, going bankrupt is insanity.
Well, listen, Wayne, I don't know exactly the details of your business, and if you say you're starving, I believe you, I guess. I didn't know you were in such financial dire straits, but you claim to be starving. That's bad. But
every business I've got is down by 60 to 70%, not 10%, not 5%, 60 to 70%. I have friends who are doing worse than me. I have friends who've gone bankrupt. I have friends who've lost their homes. The middle class is being murdered, and I define middle class as small business and down.
Well, Wayne, we've got to take a step back here. You can define any of this stuff however you want. You can give us the business disasters that you're facing, but how does that connect with a minimum wage increase? How can you connect
it connects because we can't afford it. It's impossible. Government can't demand that I raise wages at a time where the GDP is melting down, and by the way, there are no jobs.
But Wayne, that's a different. Whether the government can demand it or not, we agreed to not focus on that. Let me try a different tactic here. Okay. High school economics class. I took high school economics class, and in high school, I was 16 years old. I learned about marginal propensity to consume, which tells us that if you give a little more money to someone in the lower middle class, the likelihood that they will spend that money reinvigorating the economy is exponentially larger than if that money is kept by a big corporation or by a rich person. And by and large, Did you want to comment on that part?
Yeah, I want to give you my basic, simple economics that I've learned in my life.
Well, but hold on. Let me at least frame up the whole question.
Wage, someone has to pay for it. So all your prices are going up. So when you raise the minimum wage of, say, or the wages in general of 2 million people that work for Walmart, what you're also doing is raising the prices of every item sold at Walmart.
No, but Wayne,
million consumers.
We have to keep this fact-based, and numerous analyses on both Walmart and McDonald's have shown that even if you were to double the minimum wage paid, which would significantly affect those businesses because they have a lot of minimum wage employees, as you admit, that it would have only a slight impact on the prices they would have to charge to maintain equal profitability. That's the fact.
And the fact is that the murder of the middle class, which is the name of my new book, is all about the fact that politicians and big government are in bed with big business. All you ever talk about, David, is the effect on Walmart, but you don't talk about me, a guy who's got
well,
five
let's talk. I'm trying to talk about that. I'm trying to talk about that.
Small business creates all your jobs, and it's going to be destroyed.
I agree, but hold on a second, Wayne. First, you mentioned Walmart, and when I told you you were wrong about Walmart, you said I'm trying to talk about Walmart. I want to talk about small business, so let me frame up a question here and get you to respond.
You have no statistic that will ever show you that small business can afford more wages, higher wages, or more employees. There is no such statistic. All my friends are small businessmen, David.
Listen, I'm also a small businessman. This is my small business. This program, we have employees, we have staff. So let me posit to you how I see this. Okay, I have a handful of employees, as you do. If the minimum wage goes up, now I'm not paying my employees minimum wage, but let's say that their current wages went up by the same percentage. That's true. And they would. So let's buy into that. My costs go slightly up. You're absolutely right. Everybody who is of lower and middle income has a little bit more money. The fact that we have millions and millions of people making a little more means that I now have millions of people who can way more than offset the increase to the 5 employees I have, and it's new customers. And we see this all over the country. If you look at San Francisco years ago had a much higher minimum wage than anywhere else in the country. It applied to fast food, it applied to small business, it was across the board. And they were able to have better employment results than the rest of the country. How do you explain that?
Listen, there's only 2 things that happen when you increase wages, when government demands an increase in wages without any idea whether it can work. Big business offshores jobs. That's why America is losing big business jobs.
But hold on, Wayne. Wayne. I thought your concern wasn't the big business.
And small business goes out of business. You cannot, as government, tell me what wages I can afford to pay my employees. What you're doing is you're destroying small business, and it's always an advantage to big business. And by the way, that's how crony capitalism works. Every single thing that has happened under the Obama administration, who supposedly is such a fan of the little guy, has benefited big business.
Well, you know what? Donors. I agree with you that in general, the policies of all presidential administrations benefit big business. That part I'm with you on. But what I want to get to is what business specifically has gone out of business because of an increase to the minimum wage of pennies an hour? Give me a specific business.
David, I'm not here to give you that. I didn't come prepared with statistics of the names of businesses that have gone out.
Because it doesn't exist.
I can tell you that Spain and Italy and Greece and France are completely bankrupt, completely wrecked economies.
Wayne, I know. I've seen you do so many interviews. I know that you're being deceptive. European countries have been in a banking and currency crisis that is unrelated to the minimum wage driving individual businesses out of business. I want to make one more case.
Spending, big government, high taxes, and unionization. And of course, that big one that I'm sure you love, David, free healthcare.
Wayne, you're conflating unrelated issues, and you have offered no rebuttal to the idea that is a widely known basic economic idea. I learned it when I was 16. That when you stimulate the lower and middle class, that money is spent at small businesses, That is an absolute fact.
So Obama's economic stimulus of almost $1 trillion turned into 6 of the worst economic years in the history of America, no jobs, and now negative 2.8% GDP in the first quarter.
Come on.
Therefore, that stimulus added up to people's spending.
Wayne, this is sophistry. Wayne, this is sophistry. Every respectable economist has said that the economic situation would have been even worse were it not for that stimulus.
David, I just saw the statistic that in not just in America, but in countries all over the world, not one economist got a recession right since the year 2000. Not one. Poll after poll asked economists, is a recession coming in your country? And since 2000, there have been multiple recessions in different countries all around the world, and 0 economists got it right. Typical. They're just like politicians, David. They go to Harvard. They study books. They know nothing about the real world.
Oh my goodness, Wayne!
Never owned a business.
I can't believe you. I can't believe you're doing the we can't trust anybody who reads books thing. Okay, listen, Wayne. You've presented what I guess are arguments.
But David, by the way, you should know. You should know. I graduated Columbia University, and my daughter just graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University.
Magna cum laude or summa cum laude?
No, magna cum laude.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
My only point is that going to Harvard and Columbia does not make you a great economist.
All right. I think that the audience will judge and they will research and they will see. If you look for evidence that the minimum wage kills jobs, you will find none, and Wayne has presented none, but it's always great to have him on. Allyn Root. The book is, tell us about the book and when people can get it.
The book is The Murder of the Middle Class. It's out July 14th, available now, pre-sale at Amazon. And you'll be happy to know, David, the book is not an indictment of Democrats and liberals and Obama. It's an indictment of all politicians, of all parties. It's an indictment of government. Government isn't here to help you. Government constantly makes things worse. Today's GDP results are fact and proven results that government is not helping anyone in this economy.
All right, we're going to have Wayne back to talk about absolutist, juvenile, libertarian beliefs. We're going to need him for like an hour to cover that topic. Thanks.
Maybe a day.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, David.